It's not that we were afraid of women, we just didn't want them in our clubhouse. But by the roaring 20s, there were women knocking on the door.
Babe Ruth wasn't the only babe trying to throw his weight around. She didn't really box either, but Babe Didrikson was the greatest woman athlete of the century. The boy Babe was the king of sports. He had a big stick and he knew how to swing it. He was a man's man, and that's how we wrote it. And then there was the girl Babe. I know now that all she ever wanted was a chance to compete at the top of her game. Maybe all she ever wanted was a chance to do anything the boy Babe did. So what was she? She was a natural. She was the tomboy daughter of an immigrant Norwegian carpenter who built his kids a backyard gym. She could leap anything, serve bullets, swim like a shark.
A gangling young woman just a few years out of high school was to set the sports world on its ear when she first trooped out of Port Arthur, Texas back in 1931. Mildred Babe Didrikson smashed all existing records in the women's 80-meter high hurdle in the AAU championships at Jersey City that year.
She behaved like a great men's athlete. That's who she behaved like. I know girls on my ball club hated her. It's the envying that they wish they had been as good as her.
Not that we covered it much, but semi-pro industrial basketball was a big deal in those days. Babe was the star. She took them to the championship. There was a chance to travel and make $75 a month. Good pay in the Depression for a working-class girl recruited right out of high school. But the establishment wasn't comfortable with competitive women.
Girls can achieve both health and happiness through swimming, dancing, hiking, and even tennis and other games. But striving for supreme honors, such as medals, championships, notoriety, glory, these inevitably tend to reduce their natural love for all living things. They harm their physical attractiveness, and they tend to curtail their social charm.
Now here's something to get you in shape for later life. May the best doll win. This babe won 2 gold medals at the 1932 Los Angeles Olympics. She became internationally famous. Now the world had 2 babes.
And she took it in style. She threw her usual kisses, and she waved, and she was gracious, and she gave some great reports to the newspapers. Just a real champion.
I'm awfully glad to have been able to set this new hurdle mark and hope to do some better some other time.
But there wouldn't be another time. Babe turned pro. She needed to make a living. We sports writers weren't much help. One of my colleagues actually wrote that she became a great athlete as a compensation. Because, get this, she would not or could not compete with women at their own best game, man-snatching. Those years after the Olympics, we turned her into a joke. Yeah, babe, we wrote, get a date. Stop trying to be a man and go get one.
I really felt bad for it. I said, I'm going to buy you an evening gown. And she never thought of those kind of things before. Well, as she got off the elevator and she started walking towards me, she wanted to prove to the world, I guess, she was a woman, and her way of doing it was she reached down and got a pretty dress, raised it up, and says, now they'll know I'm a woman.
Babe's ability to become a personality in the 1930s as a woman athlete depended upon selling herself as somebody who made people wonder exactly what she was, putting herself forward sometimes as a, quote, man, sometimes as a woman, sometimes as something in between, and most of the time as something that made people wonder just what the hell she was all about. Babe's vaudeville act was an 18-minute extravaganza. She'd come vamping down from the back of the orchestra, dressed in a raincoat, wearing high-heeled shoes, bounce up on the stage and break into one of the most popular songs of the day, which was, I'm fit as a fiddle and ready for love, except Babe changed the words just slightly. I'm fit as a fiddle and ready to go. Go where, one might wonder. Not for long, because at that moment, Babe would take off her raincoat, kick off her high heels, put on her track shoes, jump on a bicycle, and work out for the next 17 minutes. After a while, Babe got tired of being referred to as the girl who looked like a boy, or who was mannish or boyish, tired and humiliated and angry about those kinds of innuendo.
Whether Babe Didrikson was a man or woman, she's normal. She enjoyed winning, and she wanted the world to know, I can beat you. And she did.
It is a fact, however, that competitive athletics tend to destroy all that is natural in women and all that which tends to make them attractive to men.
She wanted to compete. A competitor is what Babe was. And in those days, she couldn't play tennis or she'd be a professional. Once a pro in the sport, you couldn't play amateur tennis. So she took up golf, and that's where she met George. It was in a golf exhibition, her husband.
George was good for Babe. He gave up his own career as a wrestler. He became her manager and promoter. He started booking exhibitions for her and also worked with her on a game. Newspaper articles about Babe and George became quite common, as opposed to articles just about Babe.
Great copy. We wrote how she finally dropped the mask and became a real woman, and how she grew up. How all she ever really needed was a real man. George and Babe took care to keep her happy housewife image well manicured. There was plenty of domestic bliss publicity. But all she really wanted was to get out and swing. Crowds came just to watch her learn the game. Her old golfing pals remember her.
First time I met Babe, she had just only been playing 9 months, but she was traveling with Gene Saracen. Wilson set it up. And she came down here, and we played an exhibition. And she could knock the ball a mile, but she had no idea what to do after that. But that's, people just came to see her knock it.
Now, what year was that?
37. So that's way down. Yeah.
That's when she started.
And so she really only been playing about 9 months.
Yeah. It's like she picked golf because it was such a genteel sport. Probably the most respectable sport for women there was in this country. Golfers had generally come from country club backgrounds and were a refined group. And I think being in that group gave Babe more instant respectability in her eyes.
She never went to any fine schools, but she had a lot of examples in the golf world, and her old reputations die hard. She had her crude moments, but she had her gracious and genteel moments.
Yeah,
too.
she did. So she was the worst loser I ever saw. She hated to lose. She absolutely hated to lose.
She was too tough a competitor for her new sport. She played like a guy in a game for country club dames. They let her play in a few open tournaments, but she couldn't make a living. Then World War II teed off, and women were on a brand new course. Babe Ruth's successor, Joltin' Joe, became G.I. Joe, and women actually got a chance to play baseball professionally. Like a lot of women, Babe got her break during the war. Golf competition had been suspended for the duration. Since Babe couldn't make money giving professional exhibitions anyway, this was the time for her to become an amateur again by serving out a 3-year no-play sentence and sharpen her game for the post-war boom. Joe switched uniforms again, and the world was safe for golf. Re-virginized as an amateur, she blew out the field, winning 17 straight tournaments.
He was the one that got her to get her amateur back because there was no pro golf, and he made it possible for her to do what she did and win those tournaments so that she could eventually turn pro. And that probably was their goal, to get the name out there, get her to win all these tournaments, and then she would go on to become the great golfer that she did.
As soon as the war was over, she wanted to be the first to win the British Amateur. So she went over there, as she said, well, how do you hit it so far? Oh, I just loosened my girdle and let it fly. Of course, she never had a girdle on in her life, but...
The amazed Scots probably didn't realize what a gal this Texas tomboy really is. Our men had taken every other British championship, but this one we couldn't win. And then along came the Babe.
I always give my cups to George, so I'd like to present it to him now as the 16th cup in a row for my George. And I also brought him a Glengarry to wear. I crowned him the Scotchman. That's good.
For George and Babe, their ship had finally come in. They had achieved their goal of floating into the big time. They had the key to opening up the game to professional tournaments. She wanted to make money just like the men.
She would recruit amateurs. Says, come on, turn pro, because she wanted to get the LPGA started. And because she wanted to compete. And I said, well, she said, well, you want to play with the best, don't you? I said, I play golf with you every week.
And the Ladies Professional Golf Association was born.
They were pioneers. They were doing something that had not been done before. They were, let's say, crossing the great American desert in a covered wagon. But Babe had done it most of her life. She was really different. She not only created women's golf as it is today, but she created a lot of what women can do. I'm in the business world now. She created a lot of, and she was never in the business world, but she created a lot of what women can do in the business world without, I think, even knowing it.
But Babe never overcame her game's image problems. 20 years later, Nancy Lopez faced them too.
Women always have the pressure of having to look good and be skinny and have a nice haircut and have nice skin, when men, you know, as long as they have their pants on and they look like men, they're not going to say anything. And I definitely think that that's just society. You know, there's the pressures definitely on the women. When I was an amateur and I played like in the U.S. Open, people weren't watching the best players, they were watching the prettiest players. Many, many years ago, the women on the tour just looked kind of tough, you know, masculine. They didn't mean to, but that's how, you know, when you're on the golf course, you're tough, and when you're off the golf course, you're not tough.
We were leading unusual lives for females of that era. And she not only influenced women in athletics, but she influenced women generally, that they could achieve things, that they had a broader horizon than had been the acceptable horizon.
Babe would call up president of companies and say, how about putting on a tournament? And they'd say, what is it going to cost me? He says, well, how about $2,000? We'll play for that. And they said, well, you'll be there. Sure, I'll be there.
She came into this very genteel atmosphere, and she did not become especially a genteel person, but she acquired a little more polish.
Yeah.
But people accepted her. They didn't judge Babe by the same standards as they judged most women.
No,
I don't know why. She had reached that plateau where that stars sometimes reach, where they're not judged as men and women, but as athletes.
She didn't get to enjoy that plateau very long before cancer struck. In the 50s, when people whispered Big C, she yelled, "Cancer, I'll beat it." And she came back to win the 1954 U.S. Open.
I was laying there in room 201 at the Hotel Dieu Hospital, and these reports were going out about that I'd never play championship or tournament golf again. And I laid in the bed and I says, please God, let me play again. And he answered my prayer. And I want to thank God for letting me win again. It's really wonderful.
But she couldn't beat it. In 1956, when I wrote the obit, I figured her out. What was she? She was a real competitor. For post-war baby boomers, the outfield was a dream of wide open spaces. Home on the range or the national pastime. Boys were born to the dream.
Yeah, Mantle was my favorite player. So I thought about